In this video, I'll show you how to bind your quilt with sharp mitered corners and a clean edge, fast and easy. Valerie Dawn here. Let's finish our quilt. I'm just going to use my square to trim up the edges. I'm lining this up against the edge of the border, and the same with this. I know it's square. I'm just going to trim through all layers, nice and square. I have cut 2.5-inch strips, splice them together on a diagonal, and I like to double it over because it just gives a nice full binding compared to a single layer. And I just pin it all the way around. Just pin it on a diagonal here. All right. Now make sure these two edges are together. Turn it straight up like this. So that's a 45-degree angle. And then making sure these two edges stay together, fold it down again so that this edge is even with the top of the raw edge of the quilt. And then place that even with the edge, and we're going to pin on either side. And when we stitch it, we'll stitch from this point to the other end, and also from this side. And we'll have this little flap that turns over as our mitered corner. Since I'm all the way around, how to splice these together, on the start I have a 45-degree angle cut. I'm just going to lay it here, and then this piece that I want to stitch together, I'll lay it right inside so there's no slack. Right. We're going to stitch right here. So that means I've got 1/4 inch on this side, and on this layer that's my stitching line, and that's my cutting line. All right. Now make sure you don't cut on that side. You have to cut on this side. And I'm just going to flip it over so I see the other side as well. That's my stitching line. And underneath, there's my stitching line. And that's my cutting line. So you see they overlap by 1/2 inch and they meet right there. All right. So this is my cutting line right here. I can lay that against the diagonal on my board. Don't cut the quilt. Right there. Turn that piece off. And then you take these two ends and place them right together like that. I like to pin them and then stitch 1/4 inch along here. I'm back from the sewing machine, and I've stitched this probably a little heavier than or a little wider than 1/4 inch. I generally just press this open with my fingers, fold it over, and it fits perfectly. I'm going to snip the little dog ears off. And that's how you perfectly splice all the way around the edge. Now, we take it to the sewing machine and stitch 1/4 inch, the binding to the quilt edge. And when we come back, we're going to fold it over. We're not going to hand stitch this one. I'm going to do a stitch in the ditch along here and catch that in the back. Let's take a look at the final stage of this. I don't press it. I just fold this over with my fingers and fold it to the back and pin it in place. And when I stitch it, I'm going to machine stitch this one. Sometimes I hand stitch. This one I'm going to machine stitch, and I'm going to stitch. I'm going to put a matching pink bobbin and top for thread, and then I'm going to stitch in the ditch along here. Now to turn the corner, see we've stitched to that point on both sides, and then you stop. Fold that over. Just like that. We'll pin it in place here. You You have to be careful to get this pinned an even width all the way around, because when you stitch here, you'll be kind of blind to what's going on in the back, and you don't want to miss that. You have to catch the edge of this the whole way around. Now let's look at that. So on this side, I folded it over, and it looks like this on the back. And then I just take this edge and fold it over again like that. And pin that side in place. I just love this part when that crisp little corner folds over perfectly. And that's how you turn the corner. Now when I stitch this, I'm going to stitch along here, stop right in that point where they meet, right in that very corner, pivot, and then stitch again in the ditch. The last step around this quilt is to stitch in the ditch right here, and that's going to catch the back of the binding that's folded over. I like to use my seam ripper to just roll that out of the way, and it takes a little bit of practice, but you need to get that needle right in that ditch without stitching on top of the binding. And if you roll it out of the way a little bit, those stitches almost become hidden, and they're very discreet. And just remove the pins as you go, because you need them to hold the binding in the right place on the back so that you catch the edge of it. I got the binding all done, and you can see with a nice, very careful stitch in the ditch, you can barely see that line of stitching right in here, and it's very tidy on the back. Want to see how to make this quilt as you go through a quilt? Watch this next. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments if you liked this binding. Happy quilting!